We're pleased to have you to come and to share your thoughts for the city, because we know our city has a lot of issues. We hear all the time about the cuts and the layoffs. We know that's a reality. We know that Detroit has changed, downsized, but we need to know that there's still some hope, that there's still a way out of this mess, and that all is not lost. And so I guess what we really wanted to hear from you is what you feeling, where we going, what makes sense, and are we missing anything? Is it something that we should know? Can we do anything better? We know we got to do some things different, but it's still our city. We love Detroit. Many of us have been there all of our lives, or most of our lives. Yes. And so we don't want to give the city away. But by the same token, we want to make sure that we got a stake in it and what we need to do in order to get out of this fix. I asked the mayor, and we just did a little TV program, and so I said, Mr. Mayor, since you've been a national basketball player, if you could use the analogy of a basketball game, championship game, and use that metaphorically to describe where we are in the city, how would you describe it and what would you say? So I'm gonna let him say that if he wants to say it. Let's welcome member of city.
Thank you very much, Reverend Anthony, and good morning to everybody.
Good morning.
To attempt to answer the question that was just posed, my answer was, I think we are in the third quarter and we are behind. And we're going to have to play defense, because offense will not bring us all the way back. We've got to stop the opposition, but we also got to score points. So let me just bring it down to the reality of where we are today. You know, I came into this office 38 months ago, and I'm not counting, but I came in with the idea that I could help and I could make a difference. I won't take you back through the history of the last administration, but we all living with that today. As I entered the office, the first thing that I wish I could have done differently was had transition time. I had no transition time. I was voted in on the 5th of May, and I actually started work on the 9th of May. So I had no transition time whatsoever to see or feel anything in terms of what I was going to be confronted with. As I stand here before you today, there are things that have happened in the last administration that we're still finding out. It's been very, very difficult. You know, I went through a lot of turnover as far as leadership, managers, department heads was concerned, because I think the problem at the top permeated down through the organization. And you had to find out, you know, who was really doing the right thing for the citizens of the city of Detroit. And I think we've been able to do that. I think we have whittled our staff down. When I came in, we had 140 appointees. Today, I have about 91 appointees. So I've been able to look within the mayor's office and see where there were inefficiencies, to see where we were just paying people in some cases not to do much at all. But when I look back, and I don't think that I'm here to lay blame and point fingers at anybody, but the reality is this: I inherited a mess. And it didn't happen just from the Kilpatrick administration. So I'm not here to downgrade Kwame, because I supported him in both of his terms and felt like so many of us in this city felt that the guy was a breath of fresh air. He was bright, he was energetic, he was charismatic. He had so much going for him, and the hope of this city was, you know, on his back. We turn the page now. What happened, happened. We can't go back in history and change that. It's about what do we do now and what do we do on a going forward basis. Most of you know, I'm sure, that our population in Detroit has dwindled over the last 50 years, not just the last 5 or 10 years. Back in the 1950s, we were almost 2 million people. The 2010 census now has us just north of 700,000, so we have lost over half of our population and half of our tax base. A lot of the middle class, people who could afford to pay taxes, have moved out. And those middle class people who stayed here are now bearing the brunt of city services being provided for you by the city. I came into office, we had 42 departments. We had close to 15,000 employees. And very few of our citizens were happy with the services that they were getting. So as we looked at the depth of our problems from a financial standpoint, we knew that we had to start making cuts because it's very difficult to go out in the environment that we find ourselves in and get additional revenue. So and we can't cut our way out of the problem because every time you make a cut, you have a negative impact on the person and their family. But we couldn't continue to carry the overhead and meet our financial obligations. Today, as I speak to you, we have roughly about 10,600 people employed. So we've been able to whittle down through attrition, through retirements and things of that nature. We're down about 4,000 people when I first came into office. And we're still going to have to make cuts. Our last budget in this current fiscal year, we said we have to cut $250 million out of our budget. And the reason for that is at this point, we have an agreement with the state, the Financial Stability Agreement that we have with the state where they have basically final say in a lot of things on the financial side. There were 3 issues that I had to deal with. Number one, should we sign this agreement and make sure that we have control from our electorate standpoint in the city, meaning the mayor and city council? Or we could have subjected ourselves to a financial manager that the governor could have brought in here, or we could have looked at the potential of filing bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is not the answer, in my opinion. The financial manager is not the answer, in my opinion. So we wound up signing an agreement with the state where they have final say on how much we spend on an annual basis. There's an agreement, there's a board that's been put together that says our financial income is going to be set at a certain level that we all have to agree upon, and then we have to live and manage within that. And that's where we are currently. I said to the Reverend earlier, one of the things that have really bothered me this last 6 or 7 months has been the relationship with labor. And I'd say during the Christmas holidays, as my management team and I sat down with labor and did something that was unprecedented, and where labor had to give up a lot of different things. And we, in the month of February, basically agreed to tentative agreements. But those tentative agreements had to go before the state for its approval. So from the economic standpoint, we came to an agreement, and the state agreed with that. But what they didn't agree with was the work rules. And so they said they're not going to sign off on it. So inasmuch as we had come to an agreement with our labor unions, the state didn't sign off on it and put us in a horrible situation where people said, you know, we lied to them, or we backtracked, or we didn't do this or didn't do that. The state has final say. And we're now at a point where most of the labor contracts expired June 30th. So we're now in a position where we have to impose on those labor unions to move forward with necessary cuts to make sure that we can meet our budget. Now, once again, all of these cuts will have a negative impact on the services that we need to provide for our citizens. But let me say this. I want to really focus because I do believe we can get out of this. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think we can get out of this. we can't try to do everything and be everything for everybody. There's going to be some pain for a short period of time. So I've looked at about 5 or 6 things that I want to focus on for the rest of this term. Number one, going out into our communities around the city, the most pressing issue for everybody has been public safety. As the Reverend said, it's not just in Detroit, it's over urban America across this country. But let's just deal with Detroit. I have, as best I could for the 38 months I've been in office, tried not to have any cuts to public safety. And most people look at public safety strictly as police. But it's fire, it's EMS, it's Homeland Security. Those are the 4 areas for public safety. And I protected them as best I could up to this current budget year. Public safety represents 65% of our budget. So there was no way that I could have a balanced budget without having some impact on public safety. So we've made some cuts. We try to minimize them as best we can. We've gone out and we've gotten grants for the police and for the fire to make sure that we didn't cut too deep. Public safety was the number 1 issue with our citizens. Number 2 was public lighting. Because I think public lighting is an adjunct to public safety, because if our city is not well lit, we know what's going to happen. We've got a lighting system that's totally broken. You know, for those of us who can remember, you see the circuit Christmas trees where one light goes out and all the other ones go out. That's the system that we have in our public lighting system. So we got to change that. We don't have the money to do it. So our goal is to make sure that we relight our city by taking our public lighting department and making it an authority so that we can go to the public and raise money. So that's what we're going to do. Otherwise, we will never be able to fix the lights in the city. The cost that we've looked at is about $150 million. We're not in a position to go out and borrow that kind of money. So we've got to depend on this authority that the state should be voting on August 15th or 16th to put an authority in place that will allow us to go to the bond market and raise the money so that we can start fixing the lights. I don't want people to believe that if in fact that authority is passed through our legislature in Lansing, the lights are going to automatically come on in the next month or 2. It's not going to happen. But there are areas in the city where I think we'll be able to upgrade some of the lights, and we're working with DTE and others to get that done.